Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Today, I want to talk about money in midlife. You know, the midlife crisis is a very common cliche. We actually see it manifest itself all the time in guys driving sports cars, changing careers in really dramatic ways, people making very big decisions, almost as a rebellion against what they've been denying themselves, as a rebellion against the monotony of what they've experienced so far. We find ourselves many times hitting a proverbial brick wall of disappointment, of dissatisfaction, of discontent in a midlife moment. And those pressures create behaviors that we refer to commonly as the midlife crisis. But there is a lot going on. There is a lot in that midlife season that is incredibly difficult to navigate, and it can lead to us using God's resources in ways that are mostly about self-indulgence. It can lead us to make decisions that prioritize things that actually aren't priorities for our family, or certainly at a minimum are out of order. And so what we want to talk about today is what we're really facing in that season. And I'm not going to dive into the depths of the psychological challenges that we're facing, but just where a lot of these pressures come from financially and how we tend to respond to them. And so first of all, just acknowledge the fact that at that midlife point, we tend to see a few things going on. One, we are a lot of times at our peak earning. We're earning really well. We've kind of achieved a certain career path a lot of times. We get to a place where we experience a little bit of financial confidence that we have enough to do things that we've maybe denied ourselves all along. We start to get, in some cases, overconfident that we have enough because we're making more income than we've ever made. And so we'll tell ourselves we can do these things that we've said no to for a long, long time. And that does start to creep into that self-indulgent kind of style that we see in that midlife crisis. Go buy the red sports car, for example, because we can. We're making a lot of money. We're now the vice president of Muckety Mucks, whatever. We have realized a lot of what we thought we needed to achieve in order to have some of that freedom. At the same time, we're wrestling, ironically, with a sense of being trapped. Sometimes that career that we have been working in and investing in and giving our lives to feels monotonous. It feels too familiar. It feels gray. We're tired. We're wearied by that work. A lot of times we're feeling the pressures of our kids getting to a stage where now we've got to get serious about funding college, about making sure they launch well. Maybe they've tried to launch and they've come back, and now we've got the pressures of supporting them. And we've actually talked about that in podcasts before, these boomerang kids that come back and how to navigate that. That pressure is happening a lot of times in that midlife season. At the same time, we have the burden of managing and caring for aging parents a lot of times. Sometimes that's a financial burden. It's certainly a time commitment. It's a focus. We're also grieving the loss of the health of our parents and ultimately the loss of our parents themselves. And so there is just a pressure cooker here. Mix into that, if you're married, that this is also a season where the spouses many times have grown distant, either through career advancement and pressures where they've kind of pulled away to go chase those things. And so when you mix in all of that tension that's happening, along with the financial pressures of if we've undersaved, if we aren't fully on track for retirement, we can feel this sense of urgency that we better get our act together. And at the same time, we want to somehow get to a place where we feel content, where we indulge in things, where we feel good. We feel like we deserve it at this point a lot of times. We may make really drastic changes, buy a second home or a beach property because we just have these dreams and we want this and we feel entitled to it, but we don't really take the time to evaluate what does that actually mean for our finances? What are we really committing to? This is a season where a lot of times we'll make decisions on impulse that's mostly rooted in medicating that deep-seated sense of dissatisfaction or weariness. And we're trying to buy relief from that discomfort. We also will make decisions that are about preparing our kids, launching our kids, and prioritizing their needs over our own stability and sense of confidence and steadiness for our own financial planning. This is when the rubber meets the road. If they're about to go to college or they're all in college at similar times, if we haven't prepared well for that, a lot of times we will over prioritize their needs and end up putting ourselves even further behind for our own retirement planning. And so we tend to over respond, sometimes out of a sense of guilt or shame that we weren't present, we didn't do enough, we should have done more, and we'll over prioritize their costs and we'll end up making our problems worse, which adds to more pressure, adds to more weariness, adds to this sense of fatigue, and we end up then acting out and wanting to medicate that. And so it's a really fascinating time. And a lot of you might be listening and being like, man, I'm in the middle of that, or maybe I just did something that's related to that. I just bought the fancy car, or we just bought the house or the timeshare or the whatever. We just acted out of that sense of wanting something to change. And so I want to address those of you who are in it. I also want to talk about those of you who might be facing it soon. And, you may tell yourself, well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, you are. I have not actually engaged with people who are in their mid to late 40s, early 50s that haven't had some sense of this transition, this really weird pressure cooker that results in decisions and actions that they don't fully understand. And even with a rearview mirror, they look back and they go, I don't even really know what I was grasping for. And so what is most helpful in that season is actually slowing down, understand what we're doing, understand what we're actually medicating, and seek maybe some different options for how to find comfort in that discomfort. So I think first, if we're able to slow down enough, we can start to evaluate where we're actually feeling pressure from. So before we start to really dive into the discomfort that we're feeling and how we're trying to medicate that, more importantly, we need to first figure out what are the pressures that are adding up right now. Am I feeling pressure because I realize I have undersaved? I've made financial mistakes. We have not done a very good job in our stewardship until now. And I actually am really anxious about not being able to accumulate enough. Is that the pressure? Is it that I have this sense that I have not provided enough for my kids and I'm over prioritizing and I feel pressure or a responsibility to give them something I actually can't afford? Is it that I am dealing with monotony and a sense of mundane in my career and I have this pressure to feel something new, to do something different? Is it that I am in a sense of distance from my spouse? I'm not sure how to get back to a shared experience because we've faded, we've moved in different directions for so long, and that just kind of inertia has left us with a really big gap. Maybe it's that you're dealing with that kind of sandwich generation problem where you've got parents who are really needing more and more of your time, maybe even your resources. You've got a career that's kind of hitting its apex and is the most demanding it's been. And you've got kids who are needing more and more of your resources as they prepare to launch. Those are the combination of pressures that you might be feeling all at once. And so it's really helpful to tease apart what the ingredients are of this discomfort that you're feeling. Because what you may find if you don't do that step is that you'll rush into medicating that emotion. You'll rush into buying something that feels like relief for that monotony, the sports car or the vacation home, or you'll rush into overcompensating and providing more than you can afford for your kids. And what you'll realize later is that the thing you did to medicate that emotion made the pressure worse. It actually added more pressure. If you're spending money you can't afford to spend because you feel pressure that you've undersaved, that's more undersaving that you're creating, which is only exacerbating the problem. If you are working really hard to create more money to save, you're adding extra hours, you're taking on more projects at work because you feel that pressure of undersaving, you may end up in a situation where you're adding distance to the marriage that you're in, and you find yourself making that pressure worse. And so just teasing out what are all the ingredients here before we start trying to play whack-a-mole and fix things or medicate that discomfort, let's first understand where it's coming from. Once you've evaluated that for yourself, your spouse maybe has evaluated that for themselves, you can have an honest conversation about what you're actually facing. What are we dealing with? Maybe you even pull the kids into it as a family meeting and you have an honest, open dialogue about the pressures that you're feeling. If your kids never know that you are actually undersaved for retirement or that you're dealing with needs that your parents are asking from you, they're going to continue to assume that you should be able to pay for school or that you should be able to help them with these things because they don't know what you're actually dealing with because you've never told them. Same might be true for your spouse. They may not fully understand what it is you're trying to medicate because you've never shared with them really what that pressure is that's weighing your heart down. It's so important for us to first do the work to understand what's happening and then disclose that, share that with the relationships that matter, with the people in our lives who are going to be affected by the decisions we make coming out of that sense of discomfort. So we want to make sure that all of that is on the table. This is an excellent time in that midlife season to really hone in on your family's priorities. Before I go doing something that actually is counterproductive to what matters the most, let's all realign on what matters the most. What are the things we care about the most? What are the things that we really are committed to? Because when we re-up on those, what we call non-negotiables, it actually takes some of the pressure off. You may find that some of the things that you're actually uncomfortable about aren't really priorities for your family. And so the pressure relieves just because you recognize it's actually not as important as you're making it out to be. Or as you're dealing with these pressures, just by ordering them and recognizing that this thing that's in the fourth slot on our priorities is the fourth slot. I got to make sure we get these other three things done first. They have to be more important. It helps you clarify what decisions are going to aim you at those things that matter most, rather than just kind of scattershot making decisions that impact your finances and impact your family and actually pull you further away from those priorities rather than drawing you closer to them. It's also a really important time to just recognize where you are. Take a really authentic, realistic look at what you're facing and what you really can accomplish. When we think about God's resources and what He is providing for us to manage, part of that will always involve trade-offs. And so as we're evaluating and realigning to those priorities, those non-negotiables, we will also need to recognize that some of these aren't going to be available to us in this season. We can't do these things if we're also taking care of mom and dad, or we can't do these things if we prioritized college costs. So we're going to have to put some of these things down. And when we then are putting those down, we don't feel as anxious about it. We don't feel as angry about it because we chose that. We organized around it and we decided this is what we're going to set aside in order to make these other things that are more important come to pass, or in order for us to make sure we hold resources that we can provide for what our parents might need or what our kids might need. It feels less painful when you feel like you chose that rather than you feel like you had no choice. That is such a nuanced, beautiful difference that sometimes we get stuck in these thoughts of I have to, I don't have a choice. And if we can change that to I choose to, I do have a choice and I've chosen this. And that's why we're doing it. Rather than I have no choice, I'm obligated and I am stuck, I'm trapped. Most of our midlife crisis reactions are from that place of trapped. And if we can relieve that sense of being trapped and actually tell ourselves we're not trapped, we have these choices, we've chosen these things, they are the right things, they are the things we want as a family, then we relieve some of that discomfort of being trapped and we take our power back and we know we're not trapped. So we don't have such a motivation to medicate that emotion. One of the other things that happens here quite frequently is that we argue with our past. We tell ourselves we should have done this differently. We should have spent our money differently. We should have made better decisions, or maybe we should have made more self-indulgent decisions. And a lot of times this motivation in midlife is to make up for those regrets. We look back and we say, I wish I'd done this differently, so I'm going to do something really drastic now in order to reward myself for all of those years of denial, or I'm going to overreact, oversave, overhoard, and restrict myself for all those years of self-indulgence. Whichever of those sides of that coin you fall on, it's still rooted in this problem of arguing with your past, telling yourself it should have been different, it could have been different, I wish I'd have done it differently. And here's the problem. There's a lady that has this quote that's one of my favorites. It's Byron Katie is her name. When you argue with your past, you lose, but only 100% of the time. I love that quote because it's true. You can tell yourself you should have, you wished you'd done it differently, all the things that would have been different if you'd have made different decisions. You didn't. You're not going to change it. It's not changeable. And so all of the effort of telling yourself what you would have or could have done differently is wasted energy. And so if we can put down that argument, it softens some of the motivation to do something so drastic now to make up for what we wish we would have done differently. We didn't do it differently, and we're not going to have done it differently. We can't change it. But now we need to approach what's next with a balanced mindset. We want to honor God with his resources at all times. And being overly self-indulgent and focusing on just pleasure and buying all the things we told ourselves not to buy isn't necessarily an honoring thing for him, but neither is over hoarding and over saving and over accumulating out of a sense of fear. And so when we can put aside that argument of what we wish we'd done differently and just be present now, we can be asking the owner of the resources, what do you want me to do with your resources? And we can step into this midlife pressure, which is coming from all different angles, with a sense of peace, as a non-anxious presence, and make decisions that move us forward, really move us forward, rather than making decisions that are mostly rooted in overcoming our past or making up for our past. And so if you are in that season of midlife, I see you. It is really hard. It is scary. I'm still in it personally, and so I get it. But this is what I have found to be helpful as I'm feeling these things that I want to somehow medicate. We got to settle ourselves and ask the question, what's going on here? What should I really be doing about it? How do I prayerfully approach all of the weight that is falling on my shoulders and ask God to take the things I can't carry and show me how to carry the things I'm supposed to carry well in order to honor Him in all that we do? Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.